Happening, Awesemo MLB fans. Happy Saturday afternoon to you. I got a little confused this afternoon. I saw the Yankees were wearing their camouflage hats. I thought maybe it was Memorial Day. I had to Google it, but turns out that's next weekend. So happy week from Memorial Day to you. Our Yankees won this afternoon. I'm Terry McBride. We're here to talk about the main slate of MLB DFS today. Fortunately, I'm here with my pal GUNDACKER, who is going to break everything down for us. We're going to dive into a lot of odds and ends. I think it's a really interesting slate. But Gun, how's your Saturday going? How you doing?
Yeah, it's actually really good. I went to a hotel last night, get a little pool and spa, and then come home, watch the Yankees dismantle those bums from Chicago, and then now we get to work on some more baseball.
Not bad, yeah. Not a bad little night you had there, I guess. Going over to a hotel, getting all fancy. That's is that something you do fairly often? Like, just say I'm going to have a fancy night, go to a hotel, or what's
the Yankee game got canned last night, and I was like, it's Friday night, might as well. So it's just down the street to go get some pool and.
Sounds like a fun time. Not bad. All right. So we're brought to you by OddsShopper today. You guys will get into that a little bit later on. You guys have heard all about them. I'm sure they're our sister site, but we've got a lot of loyal folks hanging out in the chat already. And it's a pretty regular crew with the MLB team here. So I'm sure you guys have heard about OddsShopper, but check them out. Linked off the top of Awesemo or OddsShopper.com with 2 S's in the middle. Nice and easy to find. Find all your best bets of the day. But we'll get into that a little bit later on. Gun, give me like a quick overview on this slate, because I think it's a really interesting slate. We've got some players returning from injury. First off, we've got 2 different slates because we've got the Coors Field game on the DK slate and not on the FanDuel slate, which is totally changing the nature of the site to site. But just in a general sense, a lot of players coming back from injury. We've got a big debut of the top prospect in baseball coming up, which I think makes that lineup kind of interesting. What are you seeing in terms of the overall for this slate, the 50,000-foot view?
Yeah, I mean, it should be fun. Coors is on the slate, but maybe gets neutralized for frigid temperatures and the doubleheader, at least for the DK slate. And then Adley Rutschman being available on one site, not the other. So it does have some nuances that flip it up. But this is one of those shortened slates that give us at least some hope at pitcher. You can make cases for, Verlander, Brandon Woodruff as your aces with your slate breaking upside. You could take some chances on a good pitcher versus a good team like Frankie Montas, play a little contrarian if you want to. And then you can make case that, hey, Kyle Bradish, he's got the strikeout stuff. Joe Ryan does as well. And, they have been a little bit more bumpy game to game, but they make for fun tournament plays. So it is definitely a slate that offers several roads of strategy, depending on what your play style is. So I'm excited to kind of see where the ownerships are going to fall, because I think there's something for every approach.
Yeah, I agree. It's really interesting, particularly on the pitching side. Like you mentioned, I really think it's like a tale of 2 tiers here, where we've got like Woodruff, Verlander, and Montas kind of on this tier, depending on which one is your favorite guy of the day, how you're chasing matchups, chasing price. You've got Joe Ryan kind of hanging out just below that tier in my mind. And then a lot of guys kind of well below that, like the John Grays, the Brett Kellers, the Lorenzens of the world. So it's really interesting how this one breaks down. I'm curious to see where pitching falls as I do my sort. I've run crunches already, so I've got that all lined up. But we'll dive right into this. Let me read off a quick little bit of business here. Make sure you guys hit the like, the subscribe, all of those fun things down below. If you like it, it helps us out. And hopefully you are out there actually liking the show. We don't want you just being dishonest with us. But if you feel like being dishonest, if you don't actually like us, it does still help us out. Hit the subscribe. That helps you out, helps you know when our shows go live, because we've got tons of stuff coming up. We've got an NBA show later on that's going into the night. The guys were on till I think after 9 o'clock last night. So all sorts of stuff going on. We've got free premium tools and data up on the site. That's MLB main slate ownership for this one that we're going to be about to be talking about. There's some good ownership numbers up there. NBA ownership rankings, UFC pro plays for the fight tonight, and an NHL player rankings. So a lot of stuff going on up at the site. Make sure to check that out. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We'll dive into this slate now. We'll start off at the top with the Tampa Bay Rays in Baltimore to face the Orioles. I wrote up both sides of this one in terms of the bats. I do think the arms are somewhat interesting, though, like you mentioned, more particularly on the DK slate. What do you like about the pitchers in this one? You mentioned Bradish in the run-up, and then Jeffrey Springs sitting at 4,000, drawing some attention on the DK slate. What do you think about the 2 pitchers in this one, Guy?
Yeah, I obviously I'm going to be a little bit more on the Bradish side just because we have a little bit more developing sample size, pitch count. I never quite know what to expect from a Rays starter, but man, Bradish has seen up to 90 pitches 2 games ago. Tough matchup against the Yankees last time out. I'm willing to forgive him for that less than stellar outing, but we know he has the strikeout stuff. And then I didn't go into it, but I wonder if Bradish and Rushman have a little bit of battery history that maybe they have some fun with and can work together and have a positive game. Kind of a narrative side of that, but I think that would be a little fun to watch. But yeah, I like Bradish. He's definitely in my mix right now. I have some action on over 4 strikeouts for him as well. So I'm hoping he gets at least over that, but I think his swinging strike stuff is there. We know his strikeout acumen is in his pitching DNA, and I think there's more to realize in the big leagues for him. So as these prospect pitchers start getting more and more innings under their belt, they start building that confidence in the show. I think you'll start seeing that. And I think that's a guy I want to capitalize on, and I think he's one of those guys that would probably be better known if he wasn't in like the shadows of Grayson Rodriguez in the same organization. So I'm definitely in on Bradish. Need him to limit the walks, obviously, but I think this park is. I'm all in on this being a pitcher's park at this point.
And I do think, though, today is kind of an interesting test of that, right? Because this is the first hot day in the Northeast, right? It's
absolutely.
like 89 degrees outside today. Dog was upset when I took him for a walk. I got all sweaty walking around earlier. It wasn't good. Nobody was happy about it, but it's maybe going to be an interesting test of the new dimensions in this park. So I do think that's going to be a fun thing to watch tonight and over the next few days if it stays hot. What about Springs on the other side of this? Well, I agree with everything you said about Bradish, by the way, just real quick to unpack that. The 25% strikeout rate, I think, is real and could potentially climb. The point about the potential battery history with Rutschman is actually really interesting. That's a good call out there. And he's a bat we'll get to in a minute, I'm sure. But I think that's a really compelling point. Might just bolster, the calling out the pitch mix for a guy that he's got a little bit more experience with. Could be interesting here. What about Springs on the other side? He's going like 3 and change innings, 4 and change innings, might pitch out to the 5th inning, drawing 17% ownership attention on DK for the 4,000 price. Is that something you're willing to play here against this Orioles lineup? Are you taking some shots with that? Or is it something that you're not necessarily thinking he's going to get there? A lot of right-handed hitting in this lineup. What are you doing with Springs here?
Yeah, my knee-jerk reaction was I wasn't that enthralled by him. Didn't think that he'd have a long leash. The 76 pitches is at least encouraging because he does have strikeout stuff. I mean, we're looking at a 14.6% swinging strike rate on the season. I'd be a little bit worried about how many bullets are in the chamber. Maybe it's more of a DK SP2 play for me. I'd probably go ahead and sit it out on FanDuel. But yeah, 4K, man, you don't need much for that to pay off. And if you get a 12 spot out of them, that might be a soft enough landing. And like I said, that just adds to the creativity you could have tonight if you're not going double aces in your SPs. And I could see him getting to 12 to 15 here and playing a part.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not the worst matchup in the world. I mentioned it's a lot of potential righties in that lineup, and they were good against lefties last season, but they've really struggled against lefties so far this year, sitting at a 26.8% strikeout rate. That's 27th in baseball, creating runs 8% worse than average, no power to speak of. I am actually leaning into the Baltimore stack side of this thing. I think the top end of this lineup is really interesting, especially filled out with Rutschman. Ryan Mountcastle coming back to the lineup now adds another righty bat that's kind of underpriced, particularly underpriced on DK at 2,600. So I think that's interesting. You don't get Rutschman on the DK slate, which sucks because you need a catcher over there. You do get him on FanDuel at 2,400, where nobody plays catchers. That makes him super interesting to me. So I actually like the Baltimore lineup 1 through 6 with Jorge Mateo as a 9-hitter potential wraparound play. I think Springs would be interesting on the DK slate there, though. Like you said, you don't need much. And I think a pitcher with a 25% strikeout rate, a 14.6% swinging strike, like you said, he can get you there in 3 or 4 innings against this team. Plenty of strikeouts available for him. So I think I would both sides that situation on DK. Would you come in over or under the 17.5% ownership on him if you were taking some shots on DK, though?
I probably I probably slightly under. I guess I'd probably lean
At or
around.
about is a fine answer.
Yeah, 15% is about the number that I first thought about. So I wouldn't pinch too many pennies, but I'd get to about 15%.
Makes sense. And yeah, that price just makes a lot of combinations work. What about the bats in this one? Are you agreeing with me on the Orioles side of things? They're drawing a lot of ownership on the FanDuel slate, at least up top with Cedric Mullins pulling like 17, but it thins out fairly quickly. You're talking about 10s and 12s for some of those hitters on DK, everybody in the single digits and super affordable. You getting any Orioles stacks here?
Yeah, this lineup it changes a lot with a competent hitting like Rushman in. Now, maybe we don't expect the world, in game one. Some of these prospects take some time, but this is the top guy, right? This one means a little bit more than your average prospect here. So that lane of Hayes, Santander, Mancini, Mountcastle to Rushman, that could be a lot of fun. It might even be one of those spots where I can forego Mullins, a lefty at that ownership, and still get to a trendy stack without soaking up all of the ownership there. But I really think that 2 through 6 looks a lot like a lot of fun.
Yeah, and there's interesting combinations too, especially around on the FanDuel slate again, where you have Rutschman around Mountcastle and Rutschman, because Mountcastle offers you the first base and outfield eligibility. So you can pop him into the outfield. You can play Rutschman at the catcher first base spot and then still use, like if you were going to say the Twins, you can still sneak Gary Sanchez in there. So you're getting a double catcher lineup that nobody on God's green earth is playing except for me, because I built a bunch of them by hand before the show, because I just think it's a really interesting way to combine this team and that team. And we'll get to the Twins. I like their spot today too. But I do think this is at least 1 through 6. Is very interesting. Are you getting to shares of like Trey Mancini in the middle of that, kind of low owned, low priced, but not really popping for power this year? 0.099 ISO, only 3 home runs, but the hit tools there, the on bases there, the run creations there. Are you including Mancini in that run?
Yeah, and Mancini is one of the outspoken Orioles that doesn't like the new left field wall, because it takes away from those righty pull fly balls. So hey, if we're thinking this weather might be a little nicer to him, maybe that plays well for him, and we trust the longer, broader sample size of his ISO against lefties being a bit higher. So I wouldn't avoid him by any stretch. Like I said, Orioles, I don't have like a ton of confidence here because they still got to make contact with Springs and he can miss some bats. But yeah, I wouldn't be without Mancini in a specific stack against a lefty.
Now, speaking of not making contact all that regularly, Jorge Mateo, to me, always interesting as a wraparound. I prefer him when he's hitting a little higher in the lineup. I do think the line drives will come and some of the battle turn around a little bit. Currently 226, 262 on base is crushing for a player who relies so much on his speed, though. Even with that, he's stolen 11 bases so far, one of the league leaders. Are you getting to any Mateo in the 9 spot as a wraparound? Is he at all interesting to you, or kind of a write-off based on the lineup spot?
No, I'm fine with Mateo. It's
probably
not
a more effective guy on FanDuel for 25 in multi-position rather than 45 in shortstop only.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. I'll have a little bit of them, but yeah, but 9-hole hitter at home. You could lose a complete at bat if they're winning, but I'm there on them.
Yeah, definitely. Something to deploy in limited fashion. He's only, low single digit zone. So you roll him out a few extra stacks and you're ahead of the field. What about the Rays side of this? I wrote up the Rays yesterday. I gave him the brief treatment today. I think it's an interesting stack, but it's maybe not a priority with some of the ownership that they're pulling now on the FanDuel slate in particular. For me, the 2 through 4 hitters all pulling 25% popularity going up against a pitcher that we both like. What are you doing with the Rays bats here?
I'll get to some just to take advantage of maybe elevated temps. So looking at, let's see, our top stack tool, 10% ownership. There's still a little bit of leverage to be had. I don't like this version of the Rays lineup. Kevin Kiermaier leading off is not all that inspiring to me. And this is a Franco-less lineup, right? This is not the A team going out there today. So I'm definitely not as excited as maybe the field is. I think I'd be below the field there at that 10%, but I wouldn't have none just because I probably have a deep enough stake in Bradish that I at least want to have some hedge in my CSV out there. But Bradish has shown that he'll keep the ball on the ground, but even in the minors, as such a big strikeout guy, he'll walk you. 4 walks so far in 12 innings and against righties, 2 against lefties. So maybe if this version of the Rays lineup stays a little bit more patient, gets on base, a guy like Kiermaier does have speed. There is some sneaky pop in a Brett Phillips, but I think I'm going to undercut the field on the ownership, but I'm not going to be without him.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach here. I think we're going to maybe thin slice it under the field, but there are some interesting hitters that I definitely want to get to. A couple guys that I mentioned in the article and I think are relevant again. One guy in particular, Howard Ramirez, hitting 5th. Ton of hard hit in him. He's not a major home run hitter. He's not a big extra base hitter even, but he makes a ton of hard contact, 51.4%. And he's valuable for correlated scoring. He gets on base at a 352 clip, creating runs 16% better than average. He costs 3,200 in the outfield for 6.7% popularity on DK, 24 for 7% on FanDuel. I think he's an interesting cog in the machine for this team. I think Brett Phillips is a little bit interesting for also low prices, dead minimum on FanDuel. He's drawing 11% ownership over there, which is maybe a little high. He's only in the low single digits on DK for only 2,700. Interesting stolen base and home run guy. 13 home runs, 14 stolen bases last year, 4-4 this year. Got a little frisky last night from the 9 spot. I don't love the Zunino-less and Franco-less version of this lineup with Kiermaier up top, though, like you said. So maybe I'm picking and choosing some one-offs. Maybe I'm picking and choosing some mid-lineup stacks here. Anything else to shout out from this game before we move on to the next one?
No, it slipped my mind that Zunino's not in this lineup. That's that's some oomph, that's some upside there for a tournament. So maybe I don't know if the top stack has been adjusted or will adjust to it, but 10% might be a little high for this version of the lineup. So
yeah, no, I'm great for sure.
Yeah, big time. But no, I think we touched it all.
All right, cool. Let's take care of a little bit of business talking about Awesemo Plus MLB. You guys are here for baseball. Presumably, you know about the stuff on the site about baseball. You can get access to all of those great tools and content, the top stacks that Gunn was just checking, the top pitchers, all of our rankings, all our projections. We're adding stuff, changing stuff all the time, making it better, enhancing these tools. You can get on there for every single DFS sport that we cover with an Awesemo Plus Platinum plan. That includes access to all of the content for all of the sports that we cover. So football during football season, basketball right now, hockey right now for the playoffs, MMA. If they start playing highlight, we'll cover highlights, all kinds of stuff out there. You get into our Discord channel where we're talking shop all day long, answering questions in our DFS 101 channels. If you're a new user of Platinum, you can save 50% on your first month of an Awesemo Plus Platinum. New users only, guys. All you have to do is click the link in the video description below down there somewhere. You can activate the offer. You can head over to our join page and use promo code MLB Live, all caps, MLB Live, one word, that's MLB Live, for 50% off your first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Again, if this is for new users only. Of course, if you're only interested in playing MLDFS, this is getting long. If you're only interested in playing MLB, guys, $18.95 a week. Check it out on the site. Get you access to all the tools and content. Fantasy Cruncher is always a paid add-on. Hit me up. You know where to find me. Support at awesemo.com or DM me in Discord if you have any questions. Stop guessing. Start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Gunn, we've only gotten through one game so far. I love talking baseball with you, man, but we probably should make sure that we're covering all of these. So let's jump into the Twins against Royals game. I think that's the next one up on the list here on the schedule on the show. It is. I was like making sure we're matching what's on the screen there for people. We've got Joe Ryan on the hill, big time prospect for the Twins, pitching pretty well so far, going up against Brad Keller. Not so much for Mr. Keller, very low strikeout rate, pitch to contact kind of a guy. Sometimes suppresses opposing offenses. Talk to me about the two pitchers. You getting any Keller, and then how much of Joe Ryan are you
getting? So Keller is one of those guys that on the right slate at the right time, I'll take an inning eater, hope for that quality start. I do think this slate's robust enough that I wouldn't have to get there because that play for me is usually more like FanDuel. Like the other night, Framber Valdez was me and Eric had that debate where do we play him because he's overowned? And I was like, man, that on that slate, the quality start and the innings were worth a little bit more. Today, I think I could sit this one out on Keller, but I'm very interested in Joe Ryan. So Ryan's one of the like you said, one of the prospects that they're building around. They traded Nelson Cruz last year to the Rays and got him back, and he's somebody that's going to have to step up, especially now with more injuries with Paddock going down. He went 103 pitches in his last outing. That's a good sign for DFS players. What I would feel better about if his fly ball rate was a little bit more neutral, 4 ground balls to 12 fly balls. But for the most part, we know his strikeout stuff can be there. 11.5% swing and strike rate on the season. The Sierra is okay, 3.9. The xFIP at 4.32. I'm a little unnerved there. And I'm also a little bit concerned about the last 3 games having single-digit swing and strike rate, but he's getting through games here. So I say all that to say this. I'm definitely going to be in on Joe Ryan tonight, but there's a lot of stuff I'm going to be tracking. And number one is going to be, can we miss some more bats here? It could have been the strength of schedule thing, but I like the park. I like the matchup, and I like the price on DraftKings as well. So we have them about even as an optimal pitcher versus ownership. I'm fine with that. I might even come in a little bit above it. I got respect for this version of the Royals lineup, but not like as much as the Salvi version. So it's not like I'm running away from them.
Yeah. Take that bat out of here. MJ Melendez, nice little, some pop in that bat as well, filling in, but definitely not the same with no Salvi in the middle of it. I also like for Ryan, he's got a nice contact profile, only 32.7% hard hit so far this year in the show, 7.1% barrel rate, 86.2 miles an hour average exit velo. Not too bad, even if the ball's in the air, if you're keeping it on that trajectory, keeping it that, that light of contact. And that played out over his cup of coffee last season too, 29.2% hard hit, few more barrels, but small sample. So we'll see how that all trends out. I agree. Definitely worth monitoring. What I do like about the kid though, every single stop in the minors, he was an advanced strikeout rate, 35 plus every single stop through the Tampa Bay system before coming over to Minnesota. And it's kind of held up. We'll see it if it translates at the major league level throughout the rest of the season. It was 30% during the cup of coffee last year, 24.2 this year. And it's an interesting matchup for strikeouts because the Royals don't strike out that much against right-handed pitching. 19.8% ranked 6th in baseball, but they don't do anything at all well otherwise. A 1.90% home run rate is 26th. They're 6% below average creating runs by WRC plus. So I think it's a good target here. Are you getting to any Royals hedge stacks there though? Like, you mentioned not liking the lineup as much. I agree with you. They're fairly low owned though, and there are capable hit tools in that lineup. So you're going to any of those stacks throw back it against the Ryan ownership?
Yeah, yes, but it's because it's so easy to do it. They're one of the lowest projected owned stacks on the slate at 2.8% on DK. So I have to give up much equity to say I'm there, and it will hedge at least a quarter of my lineups that will have Joe Ryan in the mix there. But it's not fun. Like, there's not a ton of upside. This is one of those lineups that this version, I guess Melendez has shown some pop here lately, but for this version to maybe realize tournament upside, you probably want, Bobby Whitbaum, maybe Melendez, but with Merrifield and a couple of the other guys, you're probably leaning more of like stolen bases and doubles. And that's very possible from a fly ball pitcher in Kaufman. So there's a range of outcomes for that to happen. And this Twins bullpen is a little less than stellar, and they actually have allowed a lot of homers as the season progresses.
Yeah, and there's some affordable pricing. There are 4 players on both sites with multi-position across a range of positions, which you got to like in terms of just the ability to combine lineups in different ways, get to some different combinatronics on the slate. What is concerning, you mentioned, it's definitely a drive the ball. It's a hit tool and speed-oriented version of this team. 0.136 ISO on the average for the confirmed starting lineup. That's not very much power. The average home run total is just 2. The high point is 4. So not a lot of power, not a lot of home run hitting. There is a lot of power and a lot of home run hitting on the other side of this game in the Twins lineup, though. What are you going to do with the Twins here? They're kind of highly owned on the FanDuel slate at the top end of the lineup, mid-teens on DK, a little bit more playable, affordable prices. Are you getting the Twin stacks here, or are they a little bit too popular for you?
On the you mentioned the FanDuel ownership's a little bit out of there for me, but I guess Coors helps us in that regard on DK. Yeah. So yeah, there's a little bit of positive leverage. I think this lineup is too talented to not get to, but as a pitcher, Brad Keller, while he's not a big strikeout guy, he could play spoiler with the best of them because he's just giving up ground balls. And even if 1 or 2 bleeds through, you're not getting a lot of fantasy points to get you to the top of a tournament. So you really are hoping for either an anomalic performance from Brad Keller, from the guys that we like the most, or that they get through him quick enough that they dip into the bullpen. So I think the ownership on DK is low enough that I'll absolutely be there, but maybe I'll stray away on the FanDuel slate.
Favorite bats from the Twins side of things? Are you getting to any? I mentioned them before and how much I like them and the ways that you can combine them in lineups. Any Gary Sanchez in your life today? Kind of low owned on both sides, affordable, a lot of power.
Yeah, he would absolutely, he would definitely be in the twin stacks. I don't know how much of a stray Gary Sanchez I find wandering off into non-dedicated stacks here, but
Agreed.
But obviously, Buxton and Polanco are probably the two guys I like the most here. And then on the season, Keller has shown at least a propensity so far in small sample to give up some homers to lefties. So Arias I'll never bank on for power, but Kepler might get into one as a contact pitcher versus a little sneaky power lefty.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to shout out Kepler. I mentioned him in my article. Glad you brought him up. 10.2% barrel rate inside a 40.8% hard hit. Doesn't strike out a ton, 16.3% strikeouts, 12.1% walk. So he gets on base, gets some correlated scoring for you. Nice little season for Max so far. 252, 355, 420, creating runs 32% better than average. We've seen more power from him in the past too. He's sitting at a 168 ISO with 5 homers. I think we see a little bit more going forward. And yeah, I like him. 3,600 and 5.8% ownership. Right after that quartet of 13, 12% owned star caliber players. He's a nice bolt on to a DraftKings stack, as is Gary. Gary, 48.6% hard hit, 17.1% barrel rate. That can interest me again for a little bit of pop here. So no Kyle Garlick at dead minimum and no ownership that we called out on yesterday's show, but there are some bats to like in the Twins here. Anybody in particular to shout out from the Royals side, or is it time to move on from this game?
I guess Ryan. I guess last year we saw Ryan could leak him to lefty, so maybe Benintendi or Melendez get on top of one or under one.
Yeah, I think Benny was the guy I chose for the home run in my article today, just because I had taken Melendez yesterday. I agree. It's more about the lefty pop there. So time to move on. We've got, let's see, the next game up on the docket here, I think, is the Nationals against the Brewers. We've got the Nats with Patty Corbin, kind of a target, but maybe a little bit sneaky at 4,900 on DK. Maybe. Can I sell you on that? Going up against Brandon Woodruff, who's gaining a ton of justifiable popularity going up against the Nats here. Premium starter for the Brewers on the mound. Talk to me about the two pitchers. Are you getting to any of that value price for Patrick Corbin here against this pretty solid right-handed Brewers lineup?
No, I'm not. And I think, you can go for a cheaper pivot in Jeffrey Springs and probably feel a little bit better. And it's more so the matchup, right? This McCutchen's back lineup, interesting nuggets. See Mike Brosseau in the 5 spot, Hunter Renfroe, a guy that we know can, smack lefties. Lorenzo Cain, forgot he was around. I guess he was on the injured list for a bit. So this is definitely a lineup that I think could do some work here against Corbin. And Corbin has been all over the place the last couple of seasons. I know this season he's played stack spoiler in a few spots, especially I'll never forget that Miami game, but 5, 6, 8 innings his last couple of games. But the advanced metrics say we should still keep targeting 4.44 Sierra, 4.4 xFIP. The line drive rate is over 20%. So I'm fine with getting to those specific Brewers. I actually did have some Brewers prop bets when it came to hits and homers on the Brewer side. So I'm going to go ahead and yeah, if I keep, if I lose tonight because Corbin's the ultra nuts there, then I'm out of there. But when it comes to Woodruff, yeah, I'm back on the Woodruff chain Woodruff train here. I can't talk and wait for this. Your coffee's already settled in. Mine's working on it. So I needed to kick in a little bit faster. But yeah, Woodruff's a stud, man. 13.7% swing and strike rate on the season. Sierra and the xFIP well below 3.5. He's just really, really good. As always, we got to get around Soto, Cruz, and Josh Bell. And maybe this specific Nats lineup doesn't have a ton of implied strikeouts. So we're betting on the pitching talent more than the Nats here. Just Nelly Cruz, Hernandez, and Lane Thomas I got for 20% or greater K rates against righties in the last 2 seasons. So he might have to earn these strikeouts, but he's got the stuff. So I might teeter based on how ownership comes right before lock. Right now at 39%. That's probably a little aggressive for the K numbers I'm seeing in this lineup. So I might end up closer to like 25 to 30%. But I'll absolutely have like a vested interest in Woodruff to perform well tonight.
Yeah, 25-ish% right around the field is about where it looks like I'm going to be landing as I'm doing my sort here in the model in the background. I'm tamping a few things down. He was in the pure version of the sort before I, tweak things so that I'm not completely overloaded. He was far and away my highest owned pitcher. I was getting a little bit higher of a projection on him than most of the other guys in my model here. And the site really liked him today too. So there was a lot of good reason to get to him. On the Corbin side of things, I might be inclined to throw one or two darts at that 4,900 price, but I think I'd be well below that 8.9% ownership if I were playing 150 on DK. I see no real reason to go to him on the FanDuel slate here. Like you said, I'm much more enamored by the Brewers side, all the power, all the righty bats, Kiston Hero hiding in that lineup, Mike Brasso hiding in that 5 spot, like you mentioned. So I definitely want to get to the Brewers. They were coming up as the top stack, but I tamped them down a little bit because they're drawing a ton of FanDuel ownership in the 30% range. So is that a concern for you that the Brewers stack is a little bit over owned here on FanDuel? Would you be looking to undercut it? And then like on the DK side, they're in the teens to mid 20s. I think that's more playable on DK for fair prices. Would you undercut the 30% numbers on FanDuel, or are you fine just kind of taking those against Corbin, who I totally agree is much more of a target here?
Is that your recent? I'm not seeing 30% on the on FanDuel.
Last update I ran, they were in the 30s. Has it come down or has it gone up?
I'm looking at 21.8, which is way more reasonable.
Yeah, it looks like we actually just dropped an ownership update 32 seconds ago. So that was on some of the key individual hitters, though. That wasn't our top stacks tool.
Okay.
That was around like 30% on Kutch, on Luis Urias.
Gotcha.
Those guys.
Yeah, I mean, certainly McCutchen. Like if I had to just name names, McCutchen, Renfroe are like 1A, 1B for me. So I could see a lot of coagulated ownership there, which would probably juice the team stack number anyway. Yeah. If that got a little out of control at 30 plus, you're it's as good of a play it is just for mathematical sake. It's probably the better move to zig instead of zagging, or at least split the difference and not have them overlap as much. So at 30%, I wouldn't be that interested, but 20% without cores on the FanDuel slate, it's a little bit more reasonable because you're going to accidentally get into 20-30% owned guys.
Yeah, and I think, if I'm undercutting it, it's not by a dramatic amount on any one of those guys. And I think there's enough different combinations that you can put together with this lineup. You get 3-position eligibility on a good hitter like Urias. So I don't really mind that he's owned pretty significantly. I just updated it. So the current projection on Urias is 34.7%, right? That's pretty heavy, but he costs 2,900 with 3-position eligibility in the infield on FanDuel. You can do a hell of a lot with that. Mike Brasso, 2,000 dead minimum, second and third base eligible, 25% owned. All right, there's going to be a lot of people using them, but I think I can find some unique ways to put them together with some of these other hitters. Similar story with Kiston Hero, only 17% owned, 2,100 first and second base. So I kind of like that on FanDuel. I do love that they're a lot less owned and less popular for, kind of relatively similar pricing on DK. On the national side, I know you went through it quick there. Any reason to roster like full stacks of this team, or are you just targeting like Soto, Cruz, and Bell here, maybe some Yadiel?
Yeah, it's the usual suspects for me, man. It's definitely Soto, Cruz, Bell. Hernandez certainly has been he's made me regret leaving him out some stacks this year. So I definitely would have honorary mention of him. I'll get to some. I might get to more of him than Cruz, although Cruz is looking a little bit better, but not elite just yet.
Getting a little frisky, pushing that ISO back up toward the 0.1 range, the 100 range. 4 home runs though. Soto is very interesting to me. He's only slashing 250, 394, 72. It's the back end of that is totally fine. 394, 72. We do expect more slugging. 222 ISO, 8 home runs. The power's been there, the run creation's been there, but the average is a little bit low for what we typically expect from him. Still a fantastic strikeout rate and walk rate. He's interesting because he's only 3,700 on the FanDuel slate. He's coming up like crazy for me as a one-off, so I'm actually trying to tamp that down in the background here a lot, but I am perfectly happy getting above the field on him as an individual, even against Woodruff here. Am I crazy for taking out shares of him, or is he worth it at that price against an elite pitcher?
For Soto, no, I think that's a great spot. We might even have this similar conversation when it comes to like some of these Angels. Is people just avoid great pitchers, but man, these great hitters, they can get anybody. And Soto, especially in the 2 spot, right? You get that maybe 5 implied at bats. That's a lot of at bats for one of the greatest hitters on the planet. And if it's going to come in low owned, I'll take my chances in a hitter friendly. Was it American Family Field now? Always
change
Miller
the name?
Park.
Yeah.
Miller Park.
I didn't even realize they had changed it.
It's like years ago.
That was, well, who's paying attention? I hate the names. Smoothie King Center is still one of my favorites. The Pelly's home arena. Let's talk about Odd Shopper real quick, and then we'll jump into the second half of this slate. Guys, make your best bets in 30 seconds or less. And it, like Greg was saying the other day, it actually takes even less than 30 seconds if you're jumping on there. It's like 3 clicks. If you know what kind of bet, or you know what kind of team you want to bet on, which team you want to bet on, which player, you just make 3 clicks and you're getting the best odds at the best books. So Odd Shopper features hundreds of bets daily to give you the edge you need in betting NBA and NHL player props. We've got MLB up there as well. Expected win percentages and ROIs are included. Odd Shopper uses the same DFS projections that we use here at Awesemo to filter out the best bets available from all the range of sports books that are available. It features a parlay builder so you can get optimized parlays, different types of parlays too. Long odds, big payouts, shorter odds, better, smaller payouts, but a little bit safer kind of parlays. Five player parlays, pretty solid tool. An arbitrage tool that identifies risk-free guaranteed profit bets, guys. Guaranteed profit. Can't say that strongly enough. You can make those bets across different sports books with the arbitrage tool. Find the link to Odd Shopper in the description of the video down there. Head over to Odd Shopper. Start making smarter bets now. Oddshopper.com. Gun, let's jump into the third game on this slate. I think we're talking about the Rangers and the Astros, unless I put Coors Field in the way first. Yep, Rangers and the Astros. Astros got Justin Verlander, the old ace, still hanging around, still dominating on the right slates, going up against the Texas Rangers lineup. Rangers countering with Johnny Gray, who has not really been bad necessarily under the covers. Kind of interesting, but just not a lineup I like to tangle with. So talk to me about John Gray at first. Are you getting to any John Gray? Nobody else seems to be rostering him. The Astros are elite. Are you getting to any John Gray?
On DraftKings a little bit. I think I'm a big believer in advanced metrics, or at least I'm a big utilizer of advanced metrics. Yep. The 3.5 Sierra, the 3.3 XFIP, like that's really good for the ownership. And the Astros are great, but they bleed red. Martin Perez, he has shown you, right? So if I'm going to get him at a decent enough ownership to where I don't feel like a bad game will impact me too much, I'll just go ahead and grab a share or two. And I think we do get that opportunity. 2.9% ownership with that Sierra and XFIP in mind. We have him at a 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher on DraftKings at 3% ownership. I mean, that's almost 10% positive leverage. And that's a big number for a condensed baseball slate. So yeah, I think the right move is to get some John Gray, even though the heart doesn't love this matchup. So yeah, I will get there. At the same time, Astros are one of the most talented, well-rounded teams to target as a stack. No Altuve. Well, Siri seems to be a lateral at worst right now. So I'll play both sides of the fence, the old scumdacker. But I think John Gray's too good for that ownership to not at least have some shares of in deep field tournaments.
Yeah, and that's kind of it's an appealing price. I think it's a pitcher that we've talked about for years, saying, hey, once he's not pitching in that environment anymore, maybe he'll be a little bit interesting. 8,300 on DK puts him in that range of like he's a lower end, maybe you're paying not quite an SP1 price, but you're still not at that discount SP2 tier. But at 6,300 on FanDuel, that's kind of a weird price. It's super low. You can get to any bats that you want with it. You could do one of those weird 4-man stack with 4, random superstar one-off kind of a lineup. So he makes a lot of things work. He projects out okay for me. So I think I'm with you. I'll be over the field on him in a terrible matchup against the Astros here. Let's talk about Justin Verlander off the top here, going up against a weak Rangers lineup, plenty of strikeouts on the board, pushing 50% ownership on DK. I think it's pretty warranted, pushing 40% on FanDuel. What do you think of Verlander in this spot, and how much of him are you getting to?
At last check, he was like barely my highest owned pitcher. And that was before I inputted the confirmed Rangers lineup, and that lineup is fine for strikeouts. It's like half and half. Half you got to earn it. Half, all right, a little more strikeout friendly. And Verlander, like you said, he's still out there getting strikeouts. He's still out there eating innings. The swing and miss stuff isn't as high as it maybe used to be, but he's just a genius out there. He's a game manager. So I definitely am going to probably still lean on him being my highest owned guy. I'm a little less enthralled by Frankie Montas as maybe the field is, but at 50% ownership might be a little too much for my likings, and that's why we have the field projected him at. So I might be closer to like the 35 percentile, maybe 40%. But I think he's just really, really good. So I'm going to have him, but he's not going to be in half of my lineups.
And I think that's fair, right? And we've talked about a couple under-owned pitchers that we like. We got to pull those shares from somewhere. So I think getting under on a pitcher like that while still rostering a ton of them, not saying it's a bad spot or any of those things, I think it makes a ton of sense. It's worth doing here. I do agree. He's 0.68 whip. He's not allowing any opportunities. The contact has been fine. The strikeouts, like you said, a little bit of a dip, but I think we're perfectly fine getting to him for price. So if you're at or around the field, you're not necessarily making a mistake. But if we're playing the game theory aspect, like we're talking about with some of these guys, we do have to draw those shares and maybe get under on Verlander. Does that lead you into any Rangers stacks at all here? Is there any real reason to roster Rangers? Maybe the top end of some of these bats, maybe a Mitch Garver for cheap in the middle of the lineup as a DK catcher is interesting to you. Let's talk about the Rangers. Any interest in any of those bats?
Again, if we're playing numbers and we slightly undercut and then also grab the small range of outcome where he implodes. We have the Rangers, again, math and analytics here. We have the Rangers projected, at least on DraftKings, a 5.6% chance of being a top stack and half of that ownership. So we're getting positive leverage, even though it's small numbers, it's leverage nonetheless. So it helps us justify undercutting the field, still having a lot, and while also having the hedge if he does implode. Maybe this is one of those spots where I don't dedicate a full 5, but I can certainly name names if you're going to, Brad Miller, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia. Cole Calhoun is, I don't know if you believe in heaters, but every time I look up, he's hitting a homer. So I like Miller, Seager, Adolis Garcia, Cole Calhoun. So those are 4 guys I definitely will have in a player pool, and that would be my dedicated stack against Verlander if he doesn't have it tonight.
Yeah, Calhoun's a lefty bat that I can always grab for super cheap, no ownership at all. 2,600, 1% on DK, 2,200, 1% on FanDuel, hitting 5th in the middle of this lineup. 6 home runs, 215 ISO so far this season, and we know he's got pop against righties. Even against an elite righty like Verlander, he gets bat on ball. It could go. So I definitely think that's worth doing. I agree on the Brad Miller, ton of premium contact from Miller. So you really like that. Adolis Garcia, the numbers not necessarily there in terms of the triple slash, but still 6 home runs, a 197 ISO. And Garcia kind of sneakily making 51% hard hit and 10.2% barrel rate in there. So he's kind of a premium bat who is maybe going to erupt at some time soon. Limited shares for me on the Rangers side. On the Astros side of things, everybody owned under 10% on DK. We know there's big prices on some of these guys, but you mentioned Jose Siri, great way to start off the lineup. Dead minimum price on FanDuel. They need to wake up about that. He's a better player than that. I think he's very interesting over there. 2,500 on DK, very interesting. Brantley not getting any ownership. These guys seem kind of under-owned on the DK slate. They're drawing a little bit of attention around Bregman and Jordan Alvarez on FanDuel, but not much else. Maybe a little Kyle Tucker. Are they worth getting to? And what about Jeremy Pena hiding at the bottom of the lineup here? Are you getting to him?
Yeah, the Astros are always worth getting to, especially when they're not, egregiously owned, which is pretty commonly lately. And sometimes it burns me, sometimes it pays off. Like I said, no Altuve, maybe it'll dim the expectations from the field, but Siri is a guy that still has some pop and some speed. So I don't think I called it a lateral. Maybe it's a little more than a lateral, but I think he's a fine leadoff guy. So I'm in on the Astros stack. I was at 15%. It looks like I'm slightly above the field. So I'm okay with that. John Gray, if he isn't long for this one, Rangers bullpen, another one of those bullpens I like to target. And Terry, you win cash games against starting pitchers, you win tournaments against bullpens. So I'm okay with these guys against the Rangers bullpen if we can get there.
All right, new little working axiom there. I like that. That's pretty sharp. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. I think it's a good target. It's definitely, it's elite bats up and down this lineup. Jason Castro even could be a little bit sneaky from the left side of the plate here. So I definitely think for 2,700, a couple targets there for catcher on DK, if you're stacking Astros, is worth it. Pena is the most expensive shortstop on the FanDuel slate at 3,700. Which is a little bit of an oddball for me. 6.7% ownership, hitting 9th. Like you mentioned before, hitting 9th at home. I do think they'll turn this lineup over a few times. he's kind of an odd duck in in just how shortstop is coming together on that slate. I think pairing him with Siri and running it into like those two and Bregman and Alvarez is an interesting way to offset some of that heavy ownership on those two guys in the middle of the lineup. Or you get Tucker, who kind of correlates with both sides of that equation there. So maybe a Bregman, Alvarez, Tucker, Pena stack is kind of interesting on the FanDuel slate. Just weird ways that this lineup comes together. You can utilize Aledmys Diaz and his triple position eligibility for 2,100. A lot of guys with 3 position eligibility that are just useful Swiss Army knives on the FanDuel slate here. Do you like any of these Astros for a home run today? I'm getting a nice little mark on one of them. I suspect it's the same guy for you.
Alvarez.
That's the guy.
Yeah,
he's the one Astros hitter over 10 in my home run model. Interestingly, 3 Rangers hitters over 10 in my home run model on the other side. Miller, Semien, and Adolis Garcia all popping for that mark. And Cole Calhoun and Corey Seager not too far behind. So that's kind of interesting. Corey Seager is interesting at 3,300 compared to Pena at 37 too, if we're talking shortstops.
Yeah, and I just took a glance at shortstop. There's a lot of dual position eligibility. Franco's out. It's one of those spots where I hate that Pena, bottom of the lineup at home, is grabbing that much ownership. But man, with a bunch of dual position eligibility, a util spot, it's hard to get away. And I guess Seager's not going to be that high on because of Verlander. So, my favorite is Polanco. Maybe I'll just move him from second base to shortstop specifically to eat away from that Pena ownership.
Yeah, I think that might be a sharp move. So, and we'll definitely talk about that situation here in a second. Did we skip over that game?
Mm-mm.
No, we talked about that. Yeah. All right. I'm losing my mind here. So I think we covered this one pretty much top to bottom. We've got Coors Field to talk about for the DK slate. So why don't we hop into that one here before I completely forget what else we're supposed to be doing. We've got the Mets with Trevor Williams on the hill going up against Austin Gomber, the lefty for the Rockies. On the DK slate, any interest in either one of these pitchers?
No. If I tilt my head and say no, does it make it more uncertain?
Is it Gomber or did they switch that? I'm just seeing
no.
Now seeing Ty Blatch also listed.
Yeah, I have Block in my no, I have Gomber in my numbers, but I'm seeing Block Blacks in the DraftKings. So
either way, we're talking like fairly middling kind of lefties. No real reason to go to either one of those pitchers. Is Williams at all interesting to you? Decent strikeout rate, decent ability to keep the ball in the yard sometimes, but I kind of prefer the bats in this one on both sides.
Yeah, I don't think I need to get here. I'm looking at the early game just to make sure. Neither one of those guys pitched in the early game. Yeah, I don't know. I was wondering if this would be a stay away spot. I saw some pictures of a ton of snow on the ground out there. It's incredible that me and you are sitting in 90 degree butt swamp weather, and these guys are shoveling their driveways out. What's really going on? But no,
late May snowstorm.
Right? Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get there. And they activated Chris Bryant too, so the Rockies lineup does get better. I don't see the confirmed lineup yet, so I don't know if they half and half them to take it easy with them. But I don't think I'm gonna get to either of the pitchers.
Yeah, big upgrade there for the Rockies lineup. And it's a lineup that I think is maybe a little bit better than they've performed overall and worth targeting here. And they draw typically less ownership than the visiting team on almost every slate. It's true again today of the Mets pulling high 20s and 30% ownership up at the top end, mid-teens through the bottom end, where everybody's in the teens down to the 10% range on the Rockies side of things. So watch for that final lineup. Definitely interested in Chris Bryant if he's in there. Ryan McMahon is interesting to me against this righty. CJ Cron any day of the week can be in my lineup. Connor Joe, Charlie Blackmon, kind of interesting. Brendan Rodgers even is a sneaky play there. What about the Mets side of things? Are you getting to any Mets bats going up against whichever of these pitchers is going here?
Yeah, I mean, they're both lefties, so we can at least lean on the splits, right? And that's what you like for Pete Alonso, Starling Marte, Francisco Lindor. So just on merit of those kind of bats getting into a lefty in a plus park. I don't know the nuances of the cold weather neutralizing that park a little bit. They got 5 runs in that opening game.
I think it would a little.
Yeah, but my goal, my plan this morning was to kind of do the opposite of what the field was going to do, and it looks like it's not that hard to still get there. I mean, we have them a 21% chance of being a top stack. at just 23% ownership. Where was this the other night when Coors was freaking 35-40% in some of these smaller slates? So I guess I could still get there pretty easily. And then the same really goes for the Rockies. There is negative leverage, but you're going to get that on these smaller slates. So we'll just try and make those lines a little bit different. So I don't think the ownership is that egregious. So yeah, I have to get some Mets and Rockies, maybe slight undercut and give the weather a little credence.
Yeah, and the weather's the interesting thing, right? Earlier in the day, this game was sitting at a 10 run total. It jumped up to 10.5 during the afternoon. But that 10.5 is kind of low for this time of year. Like, we've seen all week long, the Coors has been in the 11 run range, a lot of recent slates. So it's kind of maybe having an impact. The 40 degrees is definitely impacting hitting conditions. We have 80 plus degrees in Camden Yards. So we'll see how weather impacts both situations, but I definitely still think it's worth getting to the Mets. And like you mentioned, they are the top ranked team in terms of the probability of success. They were drawing negative leverage, but it wasn't like egregiously bad. And I think there are some interesting bats like Eduardo Escobar in the back end of the lineup who's only drawing mid-teens ownership for a fair price. JD Davis going up against the lefty if he's in the lineup. Marcana is certainly interesting against the lefty. So there are ways to offset some of that popularity in stacking this team. It's concerning when you get into the 30s around Lindor and then 30% Alonso. You mentioned Starling Marte back in the lineup here. So I definitely think it's worth stacking. I think you can put them together in unique enough ways. Anything else to call out about this game? We've got 10-ish minutes, so we can jump into the next one, and then maybe any questions or anything like that people might want.
No, I think we've hit this one. It's Coors and it's cold. Just looking for the talent in the right lineup. Sometimes you get a weird doubleheader lineup on the second half, especially when we're dealing with a couple of returns like Marte and a couple of activations off the IL like Chris Bryant.
Yeah, definitely keep an eye on the lineups. You probably have to put them in before they're confirmed, so keep an eye out for any late swaps. Athletics with a popular but not crushingly so Frankie Montas, who was rating well in our tools on the mound going up against the ridiculously talented now Angels lineup here. Angels countering with Michael Lorenzen on the hill going up against the Athletics, who are not a ridiculously talented lineup. Do you like either one of these pitchers, Gun, and which one do you like better?
I mean, stuff-wise, I like Montas better. I do think Lorenzen's been living on a little bit on the lucky side. Yeah. Not that I love rooting for the kid, but I think some of his results are a little bit I say the word anomalaic a lot, but I think it's a little bit anomalaic. With that said, this is a bad enough Athletics lineup that the luck just might continue. I mean, the K rates in this Athletics lineup are through the roof for over half of them. So if he can get behind, a Tony Kemp or even a Larry in terms, and that's not even menacing bats. Those are just guys that might make you earn a strikeout. I think he is in play just because of the lack of talent in the A's lineup. But on a normal slate against an average to average plus team, I'd be a lot less interested. And then Frankie Montas, I'm interested for sure because I do think he is like, if you had to rank the pitchers in terms of talent on the slate, I think he's up there. He's probably third behind, or you could argue third behind Verlander, but Woodruff at one, right?
And then we'll see what happens with Joe Ryan, but it's those four to me. Like I was saying at the top of the show, it's two tiers, right? It's those the three established aces, maybe Joe Ryan, and then the rest of the dregs.
Yeah. 100%. I thought that this morning, I thought the ownership was a little bit higher, but it's come down to 26%. So that actually give us a little bit of positive leverage versus what we have him listed as being a top pitcher. This is the ultimate scumdacker, both sides of the fence spot, sure, because if he's going to, be quarter owned by the field, this is, one of the most talented lineups on the slate. And Ward is questionable. We'll see if he makes the lineup.
Any ding to your desire to get to them if Ward doesn't go? Does it really take them down a peg in terms of I would have been 15-20%, but now I'm going to be 6 to 8%, or is it not that big an impact?
I'll see what they roll out, because there's still an easy 5 to get to. Yep. But it's I can't believe we're saying for Taylor Ward, 3 months ago, but yes, 5.5K Taylor Ward being out of the lineup would certainly depreciate the upside, I think. But it's still a pretty beefy lineup, and maybe they replace them or rearrange this lineup to be a little bit easier to stack, because this is a very expensive team to get to. So yeah, I do want to keep an eye on his availability, but Ward, Trout, Ohtani, Rendon, Walsh, if all those guys are in it, mean, that's a really good team against a pretty decently high-owned pitcher. So I'll definitely be sitting on my couch tonight with really whatever happens mindset, and have stake in both ranges of outcomes, and hopefully we don't get the middle where it's just an average game,
right?
A bunch of ground outs and stuff.
Yeah, the 4 or 5 run, 4 or 5 strikeout kind of game. No win, no quality start for Frankie. Yeah, that's oh god. Now that you mention it, that's exactly what's gonna happen. God damn it. All right. So yeah, I'm with you. I definitely want to get to some Angels here. I think they are actually a little bit under owned on the DK slate. A lot of single digits over there, only 10.8% on Ohtani. It's because of how expensive they are. I think it's just difficult to get to them. Like you mentioned, a lot more affordable on FanDuel, pulling mid-20s ownership on Trout and Ohtani, mid-teens on everybody else. But I totally think it's worth doing. Brandon Marsh, I think, is definitely an interesting lefty bat in the middle of that lineup or toward the back end. 274, 331, 416, 4 home runs, a 142 ISO, creating runs 19% better than average. A little bit of sneaky speed. So maybe you build him into some stacks. 40.8% hard hit this year to go with all that. Needs to barrel the ball a little bit more to bring out the home runs, but I think he's maybe the stopping point. Like, I don't know how much Rengifo, Austin Romine, Andrew Velasquez I need. Are you getting to any of our former catcher in Austin Romine as like a sneaky DK catcher at 2,100?
No.
Yeah, not really a bad, not that kind of a standout catcher. What about the other side on the A's? Is there any reason to get to athletics against Lorenzen here? Anybody frisky in your home run model, anything like that popping?
No, my highest number, and my scale is at a 4. My highest number is like a 3.3, and these are like Laureano and Murphy's. This is not an inspiring lineup.
Yeah, for me, magic number being 10. Brown and Laureano are the top two at a 4.93 and a 4.40. So it's just not a lot of pop here. I will say on the FanDuel slate, you have 4 guys to lead off the top of the lineup, all of whom have multi-position eligibility for a maximum of 2,700 across the 4 players, drawing 10-ish% ownership for the 3 interesting guys plus Sheldon Noose in there. I don't know that I'm going to go to that, though. I think if they were all 1% owned, that might be interesting. Around 10%, I feel like that's probably over-owned here, even against Lorenzen. Is that a spot that would intrigue you at all, or is that kind of too much weight?
Yeah, I just too much for me again. Just an athletics players. I should never be like that.
Yeah, I just really don't want too many of them. We missed a Plan B Smoothies member for 6 months on Team Awesemo here. Make sure you guys are joining up on the YouTube thing there. We're giving out some subscriptions these days, I hear. It's pretty awesome. You get all kinds of badging and rewards over there. But Plan B Smoothies mentions he wishes Gundacker was his dad. So, or maybe she wishes, I'm not sure which, but yeah, looking for some dad love there. Maybe get some serious dad vibes going today. That's usually something that gets more targeted toward me. So I will absolutely take that. I am now the young one on this show. I love that. Doesn't look like we've got any real crazy questions in the chat here.
I will say I can clarify that Blotch is starting for the Rockies.
Okay.
So he's a way more of a contact pitcher than Gomber. And we do have a Rockies lineup. It's going to be Connor Joe, Charlie Blackmon, CJ Crone, Ryan McMahon, Randall Grichuk, Brendan Rodgers, Sam Hilliard, Garrett Hampson, Servant. So no Chris Bryant.
Okay. Little sneaky Sammy Hilliard in there, maybe, though. A little lefty pop going against Trevor Williams. I don't hate that. Not a lot of people roster.
You ever see the Sam Adams commercial? I do that with Sam Hilliard. That's the bit. I'll have a Samuel Hilliard. I'll have one too.
All right. I can take it. Not bad. What are we liking for home runs? What's the bomb detector seeing? Where's your home run call going today?
Yeah, I'm reshuffling off of tie block information. So at the tippy top, I'm looking at McCutchen, Renfroe, a little fake because of short sample size for Nevin, so I'm gonna disregard that, and then Bregman and Buxton. So McCutchen and Renfroe there too, and then. Yeah, I have stake in that to actually happen.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to have a lot of that as well. Renfroe sitting atop my model is also 12.72 in the old home run model here. Pete Alonso sitting at a 12, and then a lot of 10s, or a handful of 10s anyway. Anthony Santander, Jordan Alvarez, CJ Crone, Ryan Mountcastle. So some of that Orioles power shining through. Austin Hayes is also there. Brad Miller, who we talked about. So some interesting bats up at the top of the power index here. The home run model for me as well. And I'll definitely be rostering all of those teams. Anything else to call out, Gun? What's your favorite stack highest owned pitcher on either side?
My highest owned stack looks like it's going to end up being the Brewers, at least on FanDuel for sure. On DK, it's a lot even across the top. I just have like pretty even distributions of everything, and my highest owned pitcher is still Verlander.
Okay. For me, it's looking like highest owned stack, pretty close between the Angels and the Brewers, getting a lot of Angels on the FanDuel slate. Minnesota and Houston kind of right there as well. I'm kind of even across the top, to be honest, with the FanDuel slate, getting to a decent amount of that Orioles stack that I think is maybe sneaky that we talked about. Woodruff looks like he's still my highest owned FanDuel pitcher, but I kind of sliced it evenly between him, Montas, Ryan, the top end there with Verlander as well. So kind of getting fairly evenly distribution and just trying to cover a lot of range of outcomes here. Anything else to call out before we hop off here? Or you want 5 minutes to do your lineups?
Yeah, I'm pretty well set. I'm going to be waiting on Joe Madden and Taylor Ward at this point.
Yep, same here, making sure we don't have any late swaps to make, so we'll find out what goes on there. Guys, we appreciate you hanging out with us. Hit the like, hit the subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, our offers, our giveaways, all that fun stuff. You'll get all the notifications. Stick around. We've got NBA Live Before Lock coming up in a half hour. Those guys are going until 9 o'clock. That's going to be Greg and Matt LaMarca going through everything about the NBA slate tonight. Tomorrow, we've got NBA Strategy and then MLB Live Before Lock early. That's going to be 10 a.m. for NBA, 12:15 for the MLB Live Before Lock show, then NASCAR Live Before Lock at 5 o'clock, NBA Live Before Lock at 8 o'clock tomorrow. So absolutely loaded Sunday of sports. Make sure you're tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. We're out of here. We appreciate it. I'm Terry. That was Gundacker.